Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. It is the candidates for 2026 round 2. Just doing today a very quick recap and then we'll have some interesting discussion right at the end. Spoiler alert, all 8 games today were draws. Every single one of them ended in a draw, but that doesn't mean they were boring. Some of them are very interesting. They give us a lot of intel about the players, and we're going to have a discussion because I think tomorrow, round 3 and round 4 are going to be very fascinating as the players head towards their first res day. But also, Hikaru Nakamura, he started with a double black, so tomorrow he gets white for the first time. And white is where you're looking to win. The only 3 victories we've had so far in any of the games have all come with the white pieces, so we shall discuss it there. Let's look at our first game, and this was a fascinating game. Katarina Lagno versus Zuzina. And why I say not all the games are boring, we had a French, we had a Tarash, which is very interesting, and we got this line where you kind of kick the queen around a bit, and your pieces do get tied together, and for a bit here, you can see a mistake early on, and now after queen e2, Zuzina was better. She was better, she had a time advantage, and she really tried to do her best to make it tangible. A lot of players here missing chances. You can see bishop f4. Black's position was brilliant. Knight d4, queen getting kicked around. Look at this, knight takes f3. Even the sacrifice of the knight, because the white king is just in so much turmoil, you have to take, queen check, picks up the bishop again, but just somehow not capitalizing on the advantage fully. And then here, rook c8, allowing, rook takes e6, and the draw was made after a repetition. So she had a chance to Zuzina, but she missed out. Anna Musachuk versus Tanjon He. Anna Musachuk has started this tournament very, very well, considering how late she joined. This was a Petrov. Nothing much to say. The Petrov is very solid, and unless you bring a new idea or you bring something very creative, you're struggling to create active play. As you know, we just trade everything. We get to same colored bishops, and we repeat moves and make a draw. 32 moves. We don't even get to time control. Divya Deshmukh, the Battle of the Indians, she played Vaishali, and again, this was by no means a boring game. We're about to see some beautiful moves in this exchange Queen's Gambit. The players are very solid. It's a Queen's Gambit declined. There's only so much you can do. It was an exchange variation. Very solid. The bishops stared at each other. The knights maneuvered to try and get to good squares. There was a bit of a kerfuffle on the Queen's side. White all of a sudden was putting pressure. But there's nothing here. We don't quite have a repetition. And 94. And Divya Deshmukh was completely winning. In time trouble. Just had to get to move 40. Rook takes b7. The correct move was played. And she got here. But she went the wrong way. She played queen g3. And that allowed rook takes c5. Check. And you have to go for this, which allows the repetition, the simplification into the endgame. And on move 44, they agreed to the draw. Can I just say, Vaishali Rameshbabu to firstly pull out rook takes c5, and then king h7, rook c1, 4 only moves in a row, including the sacrifice of the queen to pick the queen back up and get into this rook endgame. Absolutely fantastic defense from her. And then Bibisara versus Alexander Goryachka. They ended up in this drawn position. Their game was a bit more boring. Let me just get this nice and centered again. It started with d4. It was, this, again, a Tarash variation, which is kind of like the Berlin of the Queen's Gambit, where you get into this. Black goes for some stuff, the king loses the right to castle, but it's very solid. We trade the queens, trade a bunch of pieces. It's tense for a moment, and black goes for it because you have to know what you're doing as white. But literally, we trade all of the pieces, and we get into the rook endgame, move 41, just after time control. A draw is agreed. And so we move to the open section, which is probably what you're here for. First game to look at is not Andrei Esapenko versus Matthias Blubom. It's Wei versus Praggnanandhaa. Their game was one of the more boring ones, despite it being a French. The French getting a great revival. This was more classical, going into a Steinitz. Wei Yi here, it's very fascinating. He gave Prague, initially it thought castles by white was bad, and it was giving Prague a huge advantage. Wei was down on time. Look at this. Before Prague makes this move, up almost 50 minutes on the clock, spends 10 minutes here, starts giving away a bit of his time advantage. I mean, he's still up almost an hour against Wei, but what do you generate from this position? Normally the French is very attacking, and black is, committed and can do stuff, but so can white. Like, you have to understand, this is a very dynamic position. And what can you do? Prague makes a mistake by playing rook AF7. 13 minutes, we find a good move. And then we get a couple more good moves. And we liquidate the position, very quickly. And this is what the Grandmasters are very good at. They liquidate. We trade everything into opposite colored bishops. And no one is winning this game. Yes, you can give up a pawn. Yes, Prague can play this forever, but you're never going to make progress. I will defend all my weaknesses, and eventually on move 46, they made the draw. Javokhir Sindarov against Matthias Blubom. Sindarov put him under pressure. This was a Petrov, and like I said, you've got to bring something unique. We had, something more unique than what we got in the previous game. Very similar. Early trade of queens, but Sindarov put him under pressure. Sindarov really did put him under pressure here. Knight g5, it was giving white some tangible advantage. Not quite +1, but it really liked white's position. So Matthias has to defend well, and he does. He finds, some good ideas, and then the more pieces that come off, the more we're heading to a draw. Sindarov finding good moves. But again, not even rushing to trade per se the rooks. He's got 2 bishops, but it's a very close position. Look at that. Sacrifices the bishop to get this. G6, rook g7, pick this up. And even though he got all the way here, what can you do other than make the draw? There's no more progress to be made. And yeah, Grandmasters are not just going to roll over. Not in the candidates. Here again, what looks like a quick draw, and this I knew was going to be a draw. The moment when I first saw the position, somewhere around here, it was just after this kerfuffle on the queen side, I got to this position. I saw Fabiano Caruana down to 47 minutes. I saw Anish Giri 1 hour 22, but I looked at the position, and I was like, yeah, this is going to be a draw. Because, in the few minutes in the minute or so that Anish spent on the next move, that Fabi spent, I saw this line, and then I was like, yeah, you're going to get here, we're going to trade everything, and no one is going to win this. So they traded a few more pieces, and because there's not enough weaknesses in either position, and so they repeated moves, 30 moves only for them. And then the final game, which was very interesting. So Hikaru Nakamura had a double black. You can see it ended in a draw. So he lost to Fabi in the first game, got outplayed in a very, very long game. Here we go for effectively like a Queen's Gambit declined, except you never played d4. Now we got it, and it's a lot of exchanges. Hikaru accepts a bad structure, but he's got a well-placed knight. He might be able to get this bishop out, and he's looking for activity in terms of his pieces. And so is Esipenko. We get this trade. We offer another trade. Hikaru declines it, trying to play dynamically. Esipenko ever so slightly better, particularly. But again, these players are not going to roll over. Hikaru finds rook c8 the only move. Again, queen c7 the only move. And, he found his way out of the forest that Esipenko tried to make. And there's no progress to be made. We trade queens. Yes, Esipenko even wins a pawn, but he loses one right back. You can get here, and you're never going to get anything more than this. And once we got to this rook endgame, here was Esipenko's biggest advantage, probably. 0.7. Hikaru finding the only move, which is king f6. But a5 played, rook c3, king f2. Hikaru finds rook c2, he finds rook c3, and he does enough to force a draw. Wins a couple of pawns, and comes back to stop promotion. And even though you're going to lose a lot of these, it is not a problem for you. The players agree to a draw on move 51. And so, yeah, it was not... I mean, the woman, gee whiz, that one game with the queen sacrifice from Vaishali was absolutely brilliant. Just because there are no victories does not mean there was no play. There was not fantastic play. There was. These players are playing high quality chess. I mean, the women's section, everybody's tied. Everybody's made 2 draws. I think open section, because Fabi has the lead, Sindarov has the lead. Now, I believe Sindarov had 2 whites. In fact, let me go back and check. If I'm not mistaken, Javokhir Sindarov has had a double white. He has. So he's got black in his next game against Praggnanandhaa. In fact, let me pull up the round 3 pairings. So we will go to round 3. So in the open section, we've got Matthias Blubom and Andrei Isapenko. One of those players could do with a victory tomorrow. Blubom with the white pieces. Prague has got white against Sindarov. Fabi, he's got the white pieces. He's going to push against Wei, and Hikaru is going to try and push against Anish. In candidates, particularly when Jan Nepomniachtchi has played, now it may be different this year, but getting off to a fast start helps. But none of these players are going to roll over. In terms of the ladies section or the women's candidates, the pairings for tomorrow are as follows. Now remember, these players are all on the same number of points. We've got Vaishali versus Anna Musachuk. We've got Alexandra Goryachka versus Divya Deshmukh. Zuzhina against Bibisara, and Tanshoni against Katerina Lagno. So, interesting matchups tomorrow. You would expect there is a result tomorrow in the women's section, surely. Four draws on each day, 8 draws total, no decisive results. Someone's going to get a victory, surely. Now, it's still early phases. You can see Hikaru. Today he defended very, very well. He was not nearly put under perhaps as much pressure as he was yesterday against Fabiano. But he still hasn't gotten great positions. However, he's had a double black. So now that he's going to start getting white games, he's going to, be rotating. He can start scoring some points if he's able to. Again, I'm not completely convinced on Hikaru's form. Some of you are very good defenders of him, and I encourage you to dispute me in the comments. That's what they're there for. I like Fabiano. I think Sindarov has gotten some great positions. Fabiano did well today with black. He neutralized everything. He's got white again tomorrow. Sindarov has got black. And then the other person who won was Prague. Prague had a very promising position today, wasn't quite able to convert it. And then so tomorrow he plays Sindarov, if I'm not mistaken. I just read the pairings, I should know. So perhaps you'll view this as a boring day at the candidates. I don't think it was that boring. I think there are some fascinating games. I think it tells us a great deal about the players. But no decisive shakeups in the standings. They still remain as they were at the end of round 1.